Okay. Thank you, Leapers, for joining us for our recording here. I am here with Teresa Vasquez, who is one of our awesome contacts down in the Fort Bend School District. Teresa, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Teresa Vasquez. I am the kindergarten teacher for Donald Leonetti in Fort Bend.
And that's in Texas, Central Time.
In Texas, yeah, in Texas.
And we've had a chance to work together in a few different capacities. And every time we've been able to chat with you and hear about what you're doing in your classroom, it's been not only inspiring to us, but it's been the sort of stories and content that we share with other people too, to get them excited about using Schoology in elementary. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for giving us your time. All of the internet craziness and all the stuff we've been talking about, all out of the side, and now we actually are getting our show on the road to get some of your awesome expertise around using Schoology. So a really big question to start. You have been doing amazing things with your kindergarteners using Schoology, and you've been a real kind of early adopter and a front runner in doing a lot of those awesome activities with your students using the platform. So when we're thinking about this big question that we keep talking about with our kindergarten through third grade student engagement, really how you can build those really rich and engaging classroom experiences for students. How have you found that to be accessible in Schoology? And I'd love if you wanted to share a little bit about your course with us.
So I created my course to fit my classroom and what I've been familiar with, and using technology with kids, and then adapting the blended learning concept to fit my kids. I love to create graphics. I love to use images. I do teach kindergarten, so not all of them come in knowing how to read. They don't know how to identify certain things. So I use a lot of graphics. I use a lot of pictures, and because my love for creating them, I personalize them for myself, for my kids. And I believe that definitely helps, because my students automatically can get familiar with an icon that I've created and that I've showed them. And so that's how we navigate. That's how we first started to navigate through our Schoology course. And we started in September, October time last year. Just something simple, small group. I created for my students to be able to log on. I created a little template for them with each individual, all their information. And so they logged on that way. We use QR codes. So that's how we first started. It's taken us some time to just kind of be able to navigate. But I believe that the way we started was a great kind of introduction into Schoology for my kids, because immediately they were engaged. And I would use whole group. I would show them on the big screen, say, introduce you to something, guys, something really cool, exciting, and they would love it. And so I had introduced them to a fun Quizlet that I created. And so our first interaction with our small group was, they actually, once they logged in, they got to immediately go to a Quizlet and do it all by themselves instead of in whole group. And they loved it. So I could record them or I could watch them, and they were just completely engaged. They're like, oh, I beat my score. And, I got 27 minutes, this being like 27 seconds or whatever. So it was really great. It was fun to watch. The kids enjoyed it. And so that was our first introduction. And so slowly but surely, I keep adding, and, I had a little more rigor to it, and I added a little bit more options for them. And at this point, from the beginning of the year to this point, we actually, a couple of weeks ago, we started our choice boards. And in kindergarten, I believe that this was a phenomenal kind of idea and concept. And what I noticed about my class was that they were quieter. I was like, you guys having fun? And they're like, yes. And I can't help but believe that it's with technology, but they adapted so quickly to it because it was their choice. They got to choose what they wanted to do. And immediately I gave them an incentive to, okay, well, if you post what you did today, then, I'm going to have some, Cubs Cash, what we do, or a reward for those of you who, are responding to our discussion. And it was, I don't even know what to say, because it was literally like I would have my, notification, so-and-so posted, so-and-so posted, so-and-so posted. And I would give them a 5-minute warning, because they would get upset when we had to leave for out class and they hadn't posted yet. So I was like, okay, guys, 5-minute warning. Okay, guys, 10-minute warning. And they were just excited about it. So yes, it's been a really great adventure for me and my class. And I'm looking forward to next year, now that I have a little bit more information of how I want it to run, what I want it to do, and what works best for us.
And that's so key when you're thinking about, said slowly but surely, and this idea of, okay, this year I'm going to do what I can, and I'm going to start using the tools that are engaging and that work. And you immediately saw that a Quizlet was the first thing that would get them engaged. Maybe now you're doing something like a choice board, which is way more complex, and probably not the very first thing that you would do if you were starting to use the platform. So that gradual rollout, I would love to hear a little bit more about that. You talked a little bit about that login process. What was we've
Yeah.
talked about that before. What was your kind of first experience with your kindergartners, knowing that, as you said, some of them don't even really have words and letters and keyboard recognition yet? What was that process of just getting them logged in and getting them familiar with that? How did that look?
So with my different guided reading groups, that's how I started it. I went with my higher group first, and I started with them. It literally took us about 25 minutes to log on. But once we logged on, our iPads, it would remember them. So it took us 25 seconds the next time around, and it just got easier and easier. So I did that with them first, kind of got them familiar with it. I got them interested and engaged and doing little things, discussions with me, or just logging on to look at a story or video that I created in my read box. And once they got really good at it, then I let them go and help a friend. So later on, they got to do it together. But eventually, I had all my students come and all my students log on by themselves. And it was a little more difficult for, the students who didn't really have letter ID. They really couldn't, spell their name because they had to type it all out. And I helped them. But once we all logged in, they got to go to Quizlet. And like I said, they all loved it because it was something that they got to do with me on the big screen. And they wanted to take turns, and they were able to do it by themselves. So that was something they really enjoyed.
How do QR codes come into that?
So that's what we used first. So they had to scan the code that I created. And what I did is I linked my homeroom. And there's two different ways, because one way didn't work and there was another way. And I have to go back to double check which way worked the best, because if it takes us to Schoology and we log in, it gives us an error. But when we log in through Office 365, that's how it was able to work. Right. And so once we used the QR code, we would scan for my homeroom, and it would take us straight to Office 365. And then once the students logged in with their, student.fortbend at, .com or whatever, and put in their password, then it would take them automatically to our homeroom. Awesome. And that was the first way that we started logging in. And eventually we just saved it to our homeroom, or to like our desk, or our screen, or home screen, or whatever. And we've been clicking on that. On occasion, it boots us out, so we've had to log on a couple of times. But it's a much easier process than it was in the beginning.
And then, so once they've gotten through that process and you've taught them that, and everyone's familiar with it, and your iPads have helped with that, with saving some of those names, when they're actually in your homeroom, and this might be a great point to share a little bit about your course. How do you get them engaged in the content that you actually put on your course? Because you were talking about it being visual and organizing each folder with groups. How did you encourage them to get excited about that? What did that look like?
Well, it's really interesting, because I had one student tell their mom, well, she had said, well, quacks, they get to go on Schoology all the time and bunnies don't. And I chuckled, because, as we were learning, it was a little more difficult for my bunnies than it was for the quacks. And as soon as I was able to get them all on and really start having them logging on more, it was just, they are already what they wanted to do it. It was something they all wanted to be able to go and do, because my quacks were my higher group, is what I call them. And so I would meet with them, and then I would send them off to go and, go back and reflect on a book that we had already read, or go back and, read a story that was online. And all the kids wanted to be able to do that. And again, I keep coming back to, maybe it's choice, maybe it's, I can't pinpoint it yet, but whether it's choice or whether it's being able to kind of venture off and be on their own to learn, they all already wanted to do that. They were just something that I felt like they were excited about all on their own. So it didn't take much encouraging at that point, because they would see other kids like, well, what about us? We want to go. And so it kind of fueled themselves, to be able to do that. And of course, I let them do, go with partners. They could work by themselves, or they can partner, because they would go off with their groups. So right. That explains it a little bit.
Awesome. And then, do you think you can share your screen with us so we can see a little bit about how that looks like within that folder structure? And you mentioned that you would organize your reading groups by those quacks and the peeps and the different groupings from your books? What does that actually
And
look like?
and what it is so, and just before I want to let you guys know, before I log in, I have two different big icons on my homeroom, because everything's in my homeroom. And my first one, I call it my Lion's Den. And the Lion's Den is where we have all of our guided reading. We have, whenever we do small group, that's where everything is going to be housed. When I click on my Lion's Den, you'll see it. And then I also have my Schoology Den, and the Schoology Den is literally a link to every single one of my courses. But again, I use my icons instead of my kids having to go and click on the course and read it, because we're still learning how to read in kindergarten. But they're able to use the icons and the colors that we coordinate with our subjects to be able to access our Schoology. So I'm going to first show you my Lion's Den, and this is where we have all of our guided reading groups. Let me know if you can see.
Yeah.
Can you see okay?
Right, that's perfect. Thank you.
So this is my homeroom, and so my students know that this is our Lion's Den, and this is where we go to access all of our Workstation and guided reading groups. And then this here is my Schoology Den. So I'm going to click Lion's Den first. We've added a lot of stuff. This is our choice boards. This is what we've recently been doing, our read box, our library, and then Raz Kids and Epic. And this is all links to reading. So these are my quacks. And this is the first time when I first had the folder, this is the only thing I had. I had all my guided reading groups. And I basically use it, the peeps in the big wide world science videos, we love them. So, but if I click on my quacks, I have a few things here. The first thing, after doing our Quizlet, this is our Quizlet. So this is our Quizlet that we did. It was our first thing. It was a Quizlet ABC match. And so they got to hit start, and then they play the game here. And basically they just match, and then it gives them a time. They loved it. So let's see here. Go back out here. Sasha was the second thing that we did, and this is a story that I had wrote. It's like an ebook, and this was their first kind of interaction. They had to click on to read it, and it actually gives them directions. So I had put this together for them, and then it gives them a sentence stem, and I basically, all this here I say in the audio here for the kids, so they're able to go, and then they just go ahead and they read it. They push play, and it's basically an ebook about my sister's dog that came to visit with me. And so it's the story through the eyes of Sasha, the boxer. And so these are all the characters that I created. They're actually, it's basically just pictures and then also the avatars. And so my students get to pick it. So in the beginning, we did Sasha November 8th. And it was, Brenda said Bobo was her favorite, Maybach is the kitty. And so eventually later on, if you notice from the 8th to the 9th, they started to type a little bit more. I like Sasha because she is the main character. So it's pretty fun to see kind of the progression of that. Let's see here, back to my quacks. This was another one that we did. I posted it, let's see here. I believe this one was, no, this was the 4th that we did, and this is a Baby Lion, and it's a story that my quacks had read, and it tells them basically, you know, what your favorite characters. This is during the time that we were talking about characters, and then so my students were able to post on 18th.
Amazing.
And then Ms. V went back to the repost. So I like Baby Lion, and you can tell like they didn't know how to space.
Yeah.
Baby Lion because he's brave, and then I like Father Lion. So, and this is just kind of a little bit of what we did here.
Amazing. And it looks like you didn't grade those yet. How do you go back? What's the next?
For me, grading will be, I guess, a little bit later. For right now, I just put it as a participation grade for my students, just getting familiar with it, but it can definitely be something that I can use later on. I know that for Sasha, I had a quiz, if I'm not mistaken, that they were able to do. Again, I put directions, audio, and then I give them graphics. That's one question. And Sasha is the boxer that goes to Aunt Terry to visit Aunt Terry, and it just tells them, it reads it to them. And then this one here, they're able to put it in order. They had to put it in order, and they just move it around.
Right.
So simple. That's definitely something I want to utilize a little bit more next year. But it takes a little time for me to create.
That's definitely. And even just things like seeing that question where you have a scroll bar within that ordering question, that takes a lot of getting used to for little ones to say, oh, I've got a scroll bar for the whole Schoology page, but then also within it, there's a second one, and familiarizing with them with that is awesome. But as you say,
yes,
it's a lot of front loading. There's a lot of work that goes into this. And even, you haven't even shown us your most recent thing around choice boards, which is fantastic, but a lot of prep as well. So when we think about our elementary teachers who are a little bit, further down the road, at the beginning of the road, when we're thinking about how do we encourage them, and of course there's a lot of hesitation, there can be some sort of fear factor there around that. What have you found to be successful when you're working with your colleagues around encouraging them to get to a place where you are?
So what I remind them is that once I've created it, it does take a little bit of prep, but once I created it, it's already created and I don't have to do it again. I can share it with them, and we can share, we can just by a click of a button. And that's the part that I think they think about it and like, okay. So once they put a little bit of work into it, it's already done. So it's organizing for me that I'm trying to get everything that I've done and then just kind of put it somewhere where I can share with everybody, and then everybody. So once we get familiar with that a little bit more, maybe having a place to save it for any kindergarten teacher within Schoology, and then them just being able to just click it and getting accustomed to that, as opposed to going to make copies or finding it in your files. You just click on a folder, and so that's something that I'm working on making happen, so that we're able to use those, because even in our exemplars we have different folders already, and in Schoology as a district, we have different things that they've already created that we can just click, and I add those to my folders. And it's just getting accustomed to adding things like that, knowing what's on there, what the content is, and then sharing it. But I believe that for me, it's going to be smarter, not harder, because once you're done with it, it's already created. And anybody that creates something that's engaging for their students, we'd be able to share, just house it somewhere for everybody to share, everybody to click on. And that for me gets me excited, because there's so many great ideas that I have, and I know there's a lot of great ideas out there. We just have to figure out how to share it all and make it more of an effort and time to take the time to share it. Right. I encourage them in a way that I share with them what I have, what I've done, what's possible. And I think that for us, there's a lot of things out there that we can go and search, but it's actually giving it to them, that it's like, this is what you need, this is what you do. Whenever I do my tutorials, I make like a screenshot of everything, like how to, so they see what I've done. And for me, I believe that helps to encourage them, and instead of not knowing what to do or how to do it, they're able to see it, and then it makes it a little easier to take that adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when we shared that fantastic Sway page that you made with some of our colleagues that were thinking about, how can we encourage our schools who have already started using it really heavily in middle and high school, but there's some fear around that elementary and having the little ones use it. And that Sway page was super exciting. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you did there?
I can pull it up here.
365 School, this would be similar to a Google site as well. It's a really cool kind of website creation tool within 365, right?
Basically, it talks about how I started Schoology, what Schoology is meant to me, how I utilize it, and then logging in. I have here, this is a video of them logging in. This is actually, So this is actually the Ms. V's homeroom that I created with their QR code. This is actually the first thing this is what we used. You see it here on the table. Right. This is what we used to first log in. And so this was my students, and one of them said, oh, that took forever. It took so long. In the video, you can see it's great. And then after that, like I said, it took us about 25 minutes the first time, and then the second time was like 25 seconds. It was great.
And my sister is
one more time.
And she's in second grade.
I know you're gonna get to do it too.
Wait, Emma? No.
Put it down for me, Maddie Boo.
So that just kind of talks about us logging on with a QR code, and anybody, you can scan it and it should take you to Schoology. If it'll take you to Office 365 first, and then it'll take you to your Schoology. So this is how I organized a way to allow my students to know which iPad to use, which they were already logged onto, because it took a long time, but we wanted to make sure we just got back to the one that was already saved. And so students know that wherever they go, this is the iPad they used. And the other day during choice boards, we had to go back and revisit where you're supposed to be and whose iPad you're supposed to, which iPad to use, because then it all got mixed up. And so that was the learning lesson for all of us. Yeah. So, as a kindergartners, you know, they were able to figure out, oh, okay, well, so if someone has my iPad, I can't use the other ones, and they have to partner up with someone else. Let's see here. And so this was my Quacks logging on for the first time. There's a lot of excitement there, which is a lot of fun. And then this is actually the Quizlet that originally, I think the one I showed you before was my copy, but this is the Quizlet. Again, it tells them what to do. I use the graphics and the pictures to kind of share with them where they're supposed to go. And this is actually just a screenshot. And then this is another one that they actually play.
Right.
So let's see here. This was another one that we did for just getting familiar with letter ID. This is them playing their Quizlet. They were very excited. And then this just talks about my homeroom here. Again, what I showed you, the Lion's Den, and then my Quacks folder. And this is initially how it was. Just this was the only thing we had in there in the beginning, and then gradually I just keep adding stuff. Choice boards is something that you guys taught us a while back. And so my students know that they get their iPad with whom they share with, and they also are able to have different partners, but they get to pick what they would like to do. This is pretty much our workstations. These are the same icons that I've used when I assigned it to them. And so students were able to pick 3 in a row or 3 down. But the really cool thing about our choice boards is my students can, and you should be able to see it, my students can click the icon and then it tells them what they're supposed to do in case they forget.
Amazing.
And that's a lot of fun for me and for them because it helps them to know where to go. But then also what I love about this is that it also holds them accountable. So this is their daily discussion post, and it's basically all of their choices for this time around, and I'll be switching them out over the spring break. But so they get to post. I did go to RAS Kids today with Dianara, and so my students will just, they'll post. And so we started February 27th, and today I went to Art and Sock Puppet Miss B, but they're typing up and they're writing, and I tell them, use your resources here. And so it's a big string. I've got 62 posts of my students. Yeah. And myself, I try to go back. I went back once or twice to just encourage them. Good job, guys, super.
That's a cool way to interact with them afterwards too, and hold them accountable, as you say. That's fantastic.
Yes, and I remind them that if you've already posted, if you already went to art, you don't go there again. And so we're still learning where they can go and not going to the same place over and over. But like I said, I noticed that even in my classroom that it was just, they were so engaged, and you could tell that they were enjoying themselves. And it's the same workstations they've been doing since the beginning of the year, just different elements added to it, and then with Schoology, and they really have enjoyed it a lot.
So cool. I love that. Thank you for showing us that. That's such an exciting tool that they used, and I love that something that we covered in our blended learning program, put right into action in your classroom. That's so exciting.
I did, like the next day.
Clearly they enjoyed it. Those 10 minutes of quiet probably completely paid off for the half hour you created it.
It took a little longer than that, but you know what? I don't ever have to create it again. It's already done, and I just save it to resources, and they're ready for next year.
Fantastic. So it's perfect. I love it.
Dr. Gentune from, I took a GT training, and this is something that kind of really sort of, it sparked something in me that I thought, wow, I really need to step up my game. And, I was nominated, and I actually won Digital Innovator of the Year for elementary in my district. And that said a lot about what I've done, but I also felt like I didn't share enough. And I really wanted to be able to share what I do. And I am the technology champion for my school. And it's important for me to kind of train myself and get familiar with it, and then to be able to share it. And so I think that this time around, I maybe have done a little bit more, and I can figure out a little bit this summer of what else I want to do, but I definitely feel like I want to share.
Way to share with the other people, especially if sharing is a big goal for you, being able to not only start from where you are and gradually and slowly and steadily build more and more capacity in your own classroom and in your own skill set and hone that craft, then sharing it out like this on a sway page is fantastic, or being able to share them using the resources that you have in Schoology, giving other teachers those ideas. And then as they become inspired, you can really harness that collective power that they have too, and all of that intellectual property that you're able to share with one another, so that you're not each reinventing the wheel. You're really becoming a sort of group thinking tool to them as well as they are to you.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Teresa, thank you so much for sharing all of this with us. This is so cool and so exciting. We'll share out the Sway page so that people can take a look at that too on their own time, because there's some fantastic content on there. But thank you so much for providing us with all these fantastic ideas and your enthusiasm around it. This is a really cool place to start. One day you can be like Teresa.